Namaste, Sada.
Namaste, Ajay Bhai. How are you doing?
And good morning to you, and welcome to Hindu Lounge number 17.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful journey you're starting.
Sada, let me introduce you for a lot of people who are joining new this time. So I am Ajay Shah. I'm the Executive Vice President of VHPA America, that is World Hindu Council of America. And this is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is an American Hindu show for contemporary American Hindu issues, brought to you by World Hindu Council of America. And we have an initiative called Hindu Pact, which is our policy research and advocacy collective initiative to think about contemporary American issues and advocate for contemporary American issues. And we come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern or thereabouts, because we are still in our early stages and we are still kind of working through our technical difficulties and other things. And with me, as always, is Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav Chakrabarti is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and he is also the director of advocacy and awareness and media relations for World Hindu Council of America. And this is a show that comes live every Sunday, as I mentioned a second ago, not just on Facebook, but we are on Facebook Live at facebook.com/vhpamerica.org. We are live on YouTube at youtube.com/VHPA videos. And we also come live on Twitter and Periscope at The Hindu Lounge or at VHPA News. Utsada, perhaps one of the most interesting and most fulfilling week for Hindus around the world. It is a week where the foundation stone for Sri Ram Janmabhoomi, a grand temple to Sri Ram in Ayodhya, was laid. And so that we spent a whole show last week talking about the significance of Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir and why it is important, and how and why it is reclaiming our own our own religious place of worship. But it's more than that. It's really the coming of the second independence for Hindus. After we got political independence, now it is spiritual independence, it's dharmic independence for Hindus. So we talked about all of that. So that without going into all the things we talked about last time regarding why Ram Janmabhoomi is significant to Hindus and why and how it indicates a new dawn for Hindus in terms of reclaiming reclaiming the underpinnings of a dharmic nation that is India. Without going through all that, I just want to ask you on a personal level, how did you feel when you saw the Bhumi Pujan that was being done, and at the precise moment when they did the puja, and the Prime Minister of India and all the sadhus or pujaris who were present there, they were putting the offerings in the ground. How did you feel? What was your inner feeling when that was going on?
Thank you, Ajay Bhai, for that introduction. And, to answer your question about how I was feeling that this was an end and a beginning at the same time. It was an end to the decolonization project that was going on in India, specifically, what is present day India, for many centuries, especially the 20th century. And it was the culminating point of a decolonization process that came up from the grassroots and withstood, severe aggression from the ruling class and the establishment and the mainstream. So it was a subaltern movement, and it won. That was the first thing that came to my mind, the end of a decolonization project. But it was also a beginning. And this is the part, I think, which we will discuss more in the future, because it's a beginning. It's the beginning of understanding uh, dharmic statecraft. It's the beginning of understanding for a new generation globally, including in America, of what are the moral and the social underpinnings of dharmic statecraft. And I think that's what we will discuss today. That's what you have in mind. You have very good thoughts on this. So I think that is what was the first thing that came to my mind when the Bhumi Pujan was happening. It was the end of colonization and the beginning of understanding what dharmic statecraft and dharmic ethical rule means at an individual and social level.
I want to. This is so. This week, you put it so well, right? I think this week we want to look at things from the American angle. Okay, in India, people always talk about Ram Rajya. They always talk about the how it would be. It's almost utopian concept, but it's really not just utopian concept when it comes to Hindus, when it comes to Bharat. There is a concept that is age old. I mean, by all historic accounts, Sri Ram lived about 7,000 years ago. And for 7,000 years after Sri Ram left this earth, people have been dreaming of, aspiring of living in what was then considered Ram Rajya, or a Rajya or a state that is ruled by Sri Ram. An ideal kingdom, an ideal democracy, an ideal, you know, political setup, ideal social setup, a way of life, an ideal place called an ideal state called Hindu Rajya, but not Hindu Rajya. I'm sorry, I take that back. Ram Rajya. And the reason and Ram Rajya is something that Mahatma Gandhi talked about, and we'll go into that in a little bit of more detail. And Mahatma Gandhi said that Ram Rajya is not necessarily a Hindu Rajya. Okay, and we will dig into that a little bit deeper, and we'll see what is Ram Rajya and what did Gandhiji mean when he said Ram Rajya need not be a Hindu Rajya. But we don't want to keep it in context of India. There's an Indian constitution has this image of Ram Rajya, or Shri Ram's coronation on its as a preamble, on the page of preamble. So it is embedded in the soul of India. Ram Rajya is embedded in the soul of India. But we are not talking about India here. We are talking about Hindus in America. And what we want to talk about today, Utsada, is if you were to envision Ram Rajya in America, how would it look like? Now remember, this is India. We are talking about Ram Rajya in America, envisioning of it. Ram Rajya, people around the world thought about Ram Rajya. People in Thailand talked about it. There's a city called Ayodhya, which was the historic capital. People thought about it in Indonesia. People thought about it in all over South Asia. People thought about Ram Rajya. Okay, we want to think about or envision Ram Rajya in America. Again, we're not talking about a theocratical Hindu state. That is not the goal. We are looking at the way Sri Ram lived his life, the way Sri Ram governed. We want to talk about the American principles, foundational principles of America. We want to talk about American Constitution. We want to talk about contemporary American issues, and we want to see how it should fit with the ideals of Ram Rajya. Utsada, before we delve into it in more detail, any comments? And I know that you have a couple of really good slides. So at least one with the picture with the historic reference. So why don't we go over that, and then we'll dig into what Ram Rajya is and what we mean by Ram Rajya. So here is the slide for a little bit of historic reference for you. Utsala?
Yeah. So you're going to share this.
Yes,
slide?
it's already shared. It's already shared.
Okay. So what I believe uh, is that I don't see the slide yet.
This is the historic reference slide that you have, one that mentions Ramayana and in
Or
Tamil
should oh,
Sangam.
I will share it. Would you like me to share it?
Yeah, please go ahead. Just a second. Let me get out of the share. Oh, I'm sorry. I was not sharing it. Let me go ahead and share it. Let me just share this.
Okay.
So that, if you don't mind, sorry about that.
No.
So let me share the screen and please describe the slide that you have nicely prepared here.
Well, the reason I wanted to show this slide is because before we get into the context of Ram Rajya in today's America and what it means, what it translates into, uh, it is important to understand the historicity of it, because there are a lot of people who do not represent Bhagwan Sri Ram or Ramayan as a historic entity, and that has been the subject of debate. And I wanted to present this slide because up till about a, a decade ago, very few people, very few historians, very few scholars at a global level acknowledged uh, that Ramayana was a pre common era entity. So people would try to put forth these narratives which would say that Ramayana is something that became popular in the last 1,000 years because Hindus were missing this concept of an ideal king, and therefore they looked up to something that was utopian. But I present here a, a, a piece of artifact that was unearthed at a place called Chandraketugarh in Bengal, which is 40 miles northwest of Kolkata, the capital of Bengal. And that shows the kidnapping of Devi Sita, and it depicts how she was kidnapped. So that's directly relates to the Ramayana, and it's been dated to 650 BCE. So this kind of gives us an understanding that this whole idea of Ramayana and the idealization of Bhagwan Shri Ram as a utopian, ethical, moral ruler goes back in Ramayana at least 2,500 years ago. Historically, I mean, it goes back 7,000 years as far as most Hindus are concerned in terms of understanding it. But for the biggest skeptic around the world, it's an enduring 2,400, 500 years of history, enduring history. And that is what I think lends itself relevant today. And that is why I want, in the context of you talking about Ram Rajya in America, it needs to be understood that this is a 2,500 years of enduring legacy of what Bhagwan Ram stood for. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. And I also mentioned, another 300 years later in the Tamil Sangams, you find reference to the Ramayana as well. So,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so sorry, so that, so
No,
let me,
that was my point, Ajay Bhai.
let me introduce the what is Ram Rajya, right? So in the Yuddha Kanda of Ramayana, Ram Rajya has been described. It's a this is how, so as everyone knows who's dialing into this show, that Ramayana is an itihas. Itihas is something that is witnessed, and it has been written down as the history is happening. And this is what this is how Valmiki describes Ramayana in Ramarajya in Ramayana. He says that, and I'll skip the Sanskrit because I know a lot of people who are dialing to the show. We are an American show, so I'll display the Sanskrit, but I will talk about it in English. And he says that while Rama was ruling the kingdom, there were no widows to lament, nor there was danger from wild animals, nor any fear born of diseases. Every creature felt pleased. Everyone was intent on virtue, turning their eyes towards Ram alone. Creatures did not kill one another. While Ram was ruling the kingdom, people survived for thousands of years with thousands of their progeny, all free of illness and grief. While Ram ruled the kingdom, the talks of the people centered around Ram. Ram and Ram. The world became Ram's world. The trees there were bearing flowers and fruits regularly without any injury by pests and insects. The clouds were raining in time, and the wind was delightful to touch. All the people were endowed with excellent characteristics. All were engaged in virtue. Now, you have to put this in context. Okay, you have to put this so that in context of what was being, of that era in that time, and you have to really interpret what Valmiki was saying. The essence of what Valmiki was saying that was that Ram Rajya was an ideal place. Ram Rajya was a place where everyone lived happily. Ram Rajya was a place where everyone was treated equally. Ram Rajya was a place where everyone was respected equally, whether they were humans or animals, but everyone had equal opportunity, had equal rights. There was no war, there was peace, there was equanimity. So that is the ideal. So 6,000, 7,000 years later, Mahatma Gandhi comes. There's a struggle for freedom going on. And then when the struggle of freedom, when the struggle of freedom is going on, Mahatma Gandhi, who could relate to masses like no one in that era, he wrote about Ram Rajya. And he caught people's imagination right away. And in his own unique way, Mahatma Gandhi sought to define Ram Rajya. Okay. So Mahatma Gandhi said, in fact, a little bit of tidbit, one of the only movies, I think Mahatma Gandhi saw only one or two movies in his lifetime. And one of the movies he saw was a movie called Ram Rajya. Okay. And just to talk about what Mahatma Gandhi thought about Ram Rajya. Mahatma Gandhi said, by Ram Rajya, I do not mean Hindu Rajya. I mean a divine Rajya, a divine Raj, a kingdom of God. And he said that whether Sri Ram lived or not lived, I mean, we all know it was Itihas, so he lived. But Mahatma Gandhi is trying to relate to people who don't know anything about Ramayana. He said Ram Rajya is undoubtedly one of true democracy in which the meanest citizen would be given a quick justice, a swift justice, right? Is sure of swift justice without an elaborate and costly procedure. Even the dog is described by Valmiki to have received justice under Ramayana. There's a very nice story, Soda, where a dog, a person who is hungry and who is, who's a beggar, gets very frustrated one day because he does not, even in Ram Rajya, for some reason of past karma, for some reason, he did not have enough food that day. And now there were provisions in Ram Rajya, there were social systems where the person could have gotten free food and could have gotten enough to eat, but for whatever reason, he was hungry that day and he had not eaten, and he was a little frustrated, and he took his anger out, and he was angry about something, and he took his anger out on this poor dog. Now, Sri Ram held darbar every day. Darbar means a court where anyone and everyone can come and present the problems, and Sri Ram would solve the problems in real time. And Ram sends out Lakshman to make sure that every last person was heard. And Lakshman comes back and said, yes, everyone is heard. And Ram said, well, can you go back and check again? Because I have a sense that someone is not heard. So Lakshman said, well, yeah, there is this dog who is hurt. Brings the dog in. And it turns out that this dog is injured. Sri Ram has a way of communicating with animals. And the dog tells Sri Ram that I was hurt by this person who threw a stone at me when I was just lying around. And Sri Ram says, bring the person who threw the stone at you in. They bring the person in, and Sri Ram consults the book of laws and the experts, and they say, well, there's really no provision for, we have provisions for a person being mean to another person, but we have no provision for a person being mean to a dog. And Sri Ram said, well, in that case, the dog deserves justice. Let's ask the dog what justice to give to the person. And there's a whole story behind that, and we'll not go into all of that. But the point is here that even animals and their rights were respected, not just the rights of the people. Okay.
Correct.
So Mahatma Gandhi says, Ramayana of my dream ensures equal rights alike for prince and the pauper. By political independence, I do not mean an imitation to British House of Commons and all that, but it's sovereignty of people. Okay, it's a sovereignty of people based on moral authority. And Mahatma Gandhi then goes on and makes a lot more statements. He talks about the morality, the country that is governed by. He also talks about national army, and he said, like, look, when a country becomes free, you don't want the government of a free country to be tyrannical. You don't want the army to rule the country. You want the rule of law, and you want the people to rule, and rule based on morality. And you can give the weakest person in the society the full rights, not the national, and not have the country governed by its national army and the tyranny of the government. And Mahatma Gandhi was very clear that that is what Ram Rajya is. It's not tyranny of government. It's governed by the people for the people. Okay, and you can already start sensing how close it is to American democracy. And then he says there can be no Ram Rajya in present situation as long as there are rich and poor. But Utsada, very relevant to America, Mahatma Gandhi also says that it is not the equality you bring by the means of violence. And that's why he said, I am opposed to socialists. And he also says, I am opposed to communists. I don't want the way the communists try to equalize the society by extortion and by extremism and by forcing people, and by forcing people to create a society that is just inherently under the state control. And Mahatma Gandhi is very clear that he's not saying that I want to give more money to the rich. He's not saying that I want to neglect the poor. But he clearly says that, look, a socialist country is not going to be a country where everyone's rights are going to be respected, everyone is going to be treated with equality, everyone is going to be treated with respect. And we saw that when Soviet Union failed, and that you can only oppress people in the name of ideology for so long. Also, I want to get you in. Think we have a few people already online, but if you have a couple of quick comments, then I'll get more people in one after the other. Please go ahead.
I wanted to make one more point about the concept of utopian Ram Rajya in today's American perspective, and that is the idea of colonialism and occupation. One of the very critical lessons that we learn from Ramayana is that despite having a complete win in Lanka, Bhagwan Shri Ram never envisioned ruling Lanka or moving his capital to Lanka, because Lanka was a very beautiful place, and it was a very highly civilized society and a well endowed and wealthy place. So that was something that is very evident in the way it is presented in the Ramayana, how he chooses to go back to Ayodhya, the place where he came from. And that leaves us with a lesson that is relevant in today's context, and that is what exactly is the thought of Ramayana on occupation and colonialism. And I think that is very relevant to American society as we look at it today.
Absolutely. And we are going to go into that a lot more detail. Let me go get people who are waiting for us. There are two people waiting here. So I'm going to get person who is dialed in with the name Galaxy S9 Plus. And you're joining us. Please introduce yourself. Namaste and welcome to Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. It's our weekly show, live show on contemporary American Hindu issues. Please go ahead. I think you're on mute. We can't hear you. Um, I Are you on? So someone who's calling from Galaxy S9 Plus, you're online. We can hear some background noise. This is. I am going to put you in the waiting room while you sort out your issues. Um, CL, the name of the person is CL. So CL, you are online. If you want to join us, please go ahead. You're on. You're on the live show. Namaste. Okay, I am going to put CL in the waiting room while they sort out the audio issues, and I'm going to get Subir Kumarji online. So, Subirji, you are now joining us. Namaste and welcome to Hindu Lounge. Just a second. Yes, you are now on. So please go ahead. And we are doing this without the audio for now. So please, a video. Please go ahead. Subirji, please go ahead. Subirji, you're on? Can you hear us? I think the line got disconnected. We will wait for it. And Utsada, your video is off, so I'm going to start you to start your video, and so that you can come online. Yes, you are online. All right, let me continue with this, Utsada. So this is, so. And then and Mahatma Gandhi, of course, continuing on Mahatma Gandhi's thought on Hindu Rashtra, or sorry, Ram Rajya, and not Hindu Rashtra is, very relevant. That's what I meant to say, that Mahatma Gandhi's distinction between Hindu Rashtra and Ram Rajya is relevant in American context. It may not be as relevant in Indian context because India is the Dharma Bhumi. It's a place where Hindu Dharma evolved. In in India's context, Hindu Rashtra and Ram Rajya are one and the same. They're synonymous. But in American context, what Gandhiji said makes sense, which is there is a distinction between Ram Rajya and Hindu Rashtra. Ram Rajya's, the core principles of Ram Rajya applies in American context. So let's go over some of the underpinnings of Ram Rajya and see how it maps on to the principles of American democracy, American Constitution, American plurality, and all of that. So that the first topic that I want to pick is one thing that Sri Ram was very, very, one thing that everyone admired Sri Ram about is the equal treatment that Sri Ram afforded to everyone he came across. He did not make distinction between rich and poor. He did not consider one varna to be superior over the other varna. He did not even consider one jati, varna based on people's profession, or jati class of people. He did not consider one class of people to be more than other class of people, or people who belong to a smaller kingdom to be better than people who belong to a bigger kingdom. He made no difference between them, right? No differentiation. He treated Guha, the king, a fisherman king, with the same respect that he treated other kings. He treated Sugriv, the Vanar or the ape king, with the same respect as you would treat any other king. He
Correct. Correct.
and he treated Shabri, a, a woman who was living in tribal area. She gave the berries that she had tasted, half-eaten berries, and Sri Ram ate all of them up without any pretense, any feeling that he was, he would have taken the same kind of fruit from a king. He took it from Sabri, and he liberated. So the Ram's life and his kingdom is built on equality. And if you think about America today, where the racial differences, the differences in class with rich and poor and 1% and 99%, and all these divisions that people bring about, so that there's a lesson here for everyone, right, in America?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And more importantly, the lesson also is about Valmiki, who wrote the Ramayana, and what his background was. So it is a mirror of what Ram Rajya stood for. For somebody like Valmiki to come up and become one of the greatest, narrators of history, to put it in the most secular way I can put it, is amazing. And that is an impact of Ram Rajya. And because for those who don't know history or itihas of Ramayana, people should research the history of Valmiki himself as an individual. And there is no better testimony to the outcome of what Ram Rajya was than the transformation that Valmiki himself went through. And I think that is extremely relevant in the American context.
Yeah, anyone through their achievement can become anything they wanted. Valmiki, as you correctly said, was a robber, and he rose to become this witness to history, and he became a devotee of Sri Ram, and he authored Ramayana.
Correct.
And there was nothing that said that someone who had committed some crimes in the past cannot learn from the mistake, improve themselves, and attain the highest honor. 7,000 years later, people still remember Valmiki.
Correct.
And you're so right, Utsada. Let me get CL online. I'm just admitting him or her. I don't know who it is. So, CL, you are online. You are on HinduLounge. You are live. Please go ahead. Namaste. You're online? Can you hear us?
Are we having some? I think I can't hear her.
Yeah, I can't either. So I'm not sure what the problem is, because we have been doing this live show for a while now, so I'm not sure what the problem is. Let me. I really apologize. I'm going to put you just on a brief hold while you figure out. I'm going to take one more call just to see how it goes. And this is from someone with the area code 469. Please go ahead. You are on HinduLounge. Namaste.
Hello, namaste.
Namaste. You are online. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, yes, sir. Finally, I'm online. Yeah, it's me, CL Banjari.
Namaste.
Basically, you hearing me, sir?
Yes.
I'm good.
Yes,
yeah.
You're good.
It's me, CL Banjari, Chopal Banjari. I live in Texas, Dallas, Texas.
Okay. Welcome.
Originally, I'm from Nepal.
Okay.
And it's my couple of time I'm with this online link with Hindu Council, and I'm very eagerly listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all about me now. Anyway, I'm very excited to listening this all of these things.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We are so happy that you joined us. Thank you and welcome. We are honored to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
And let's get one more time someone who has joined from Galaxy S9. Please go ahead. You're on HinduLounge. Namaste. Someone who's calling from Galaxy S9. You are
finally.
on HinduLounge.
Yeah, it's me, sir. That's CL Banjari. Finally, I access on Zoom.
Okay. So it came both ways. So thank you. Okay.
Yeah, finally I came here.
All right. Thank you.
I just wanted to say something to Mr. Banjare.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Sir, thank you so much for coming to the show. I went to Nepal and traveled in Nepal when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
And the best Hindu ethics and my knowledge about Hindu Dharma, I still remember the most of it I understood and felt was in the rural areas in the hills of Nepal near Pokhara and all these places. So I will always remember all my life my experience in Nepal. And
yes, sir. But mostly, do you remember in part of name of the part? Pokhara, you said Pokhara.
I went and traveled outside the town of Pokhara, and
okay.
So in those days I was more adventurous, and I actually traveled on the top of a bus. And it was just fascinating going through the mountains. And people need to visit Nepal to really understand what mountains are.
Exactly, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
Thank you, CLG. We appreciate your calling. Thank you very much. Please call again. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So then let me move on, as we were talking about the American context of Sri Ram Janmabhoomi. I'm really glad that you shared this experience. The other thing is Sri Ram is a king. Now, even though Sri Ram was a king and he got his kingdom based on his birth, which was the tradition in those days. But if you really look at the way Sri Ram governed, it's really how any democracy should be governed. Now, Sri Ram was the most powerful king. Okay, there was no question about it. Every other king revered Sri Ram. The people of Ayodhya revered Sri Ram. But Sri Ram not just treated everyone equally, but he really took the public opinion to heart. Okay? He had no obligation to do that. He was an absolute monarch. But what did Sri Ram do? He would disguise himself. He would go out and visit the streets of Ayodhya every night to hear what people were saying. He had his fingers on the pulse of the people in his kingdom. Okay? And this is before the days of polling and opinion polls and ruling by opinion polls. That is not to say that he blindly followed what people said, but he always had the sense of what people wanted. He always had a sense of if there was a suffering. He always had a sense if there was a need, and he would go and fulfill those needs because he knew what people wanted. He knew what people aspired to. That is unique, really, among kings who lived 7,000 years ago. And it is as relevant in America today as it was 7,000 years ago in Ram Rajya. You want the people who are in power, whether it's in Congress, or in Senate, or they're the presidents or vice presidents or governors or state legislators or even your city council people, to not adhere to this, things that are driven by special interest. You want them to listen to ordinary people and do things that are in their interest. That's what Sri Ram did. Okay. And so even beyond that, Sri Ram, when time came to choose between family and country, Sri Ram chose country. So it is not nepotism. And the reason I say that is because uh, when there was a criticism, and you can interpret this particular story in many, many different ways. You can look at it from many different ways, and you can think of it as a story, that an incident that you can look at it and say, this is a person who, even though his heart is crying, he is doing what people want him to do. And even though it is injustice to a member of his own family, he's choosing people over injustice to a person in his own family, someone who's dearest to him. And I'm talking about when Sri Ram hears that he would be treating Sita differently, Sri Ram chooses to hear the person in the kingdom and not Sita. You can think of it as injustice to a person in his own family, to Sita. And Sri Ram's heart is crying. When we hear about this story, our heart cries. But as a king, Sri Ram did not indulge in putting family first. He said, if this is the sentiment of ordinary people, I'm going to listen to that first.
Correct. So
And Uchana, before you go there, I just want to read this one thing. Dhaval Joshipura ji has joined, and he says that Ram was a prince and nearby kingdoms were ready to help him, but Ram took help from downtrodden and empowered them, like Shabri, Kevat, etc. He won Ravan but did not stay. And we are coming to that, Dhavalji, your second point. But Utsava, go ahead, please.
Correct. So I wanted to just bring focus to the idea of the order or the hierarchy of somebody in a position of power, and relate it to what is today a very pop narrative in America. So 7,000 years ago, what Ramayana depicts is that when you are in the position of absolute power, the betterment of the most overrules the betterment of the few, which overrules the betterment of the individual or the interest of the individual. And this is the order in which Bhagavan Sri Ram, his own life and the way he leads it, he gives the most importance as a king to the people, and the people who are the most numerous. Then his order of importance goes to the leaders in the society. Then his order of importance goes to his family. And the last order of importance is his self, which is why he ends up spending 14 years in Vanavas, because it's the self of Bhagavan Sri Ram was the least important in his context. So that is a lesson, in pop culture in America. You hear today the phrases like, with power comes responsibility. Young people who watch Spider-Man have heard this phrase, with more power comes more responsibility. There is this comes from 7,000 years of Ramayana's depiction of how more power, and in fact, Bhagavan Sri Ram was an avatar of Vishnu, so the most powerful, looked at responsibility because his self was the least important to him.
Yep. So that's so well put. And this is the same Sita. I mean, I talk about women's empowerment, and Utsada, I mean, we talk about the 100 years of suffrage for women in America. Since they got the voting rights, it's now been 100 years. And we still, if you look at the, in all the aspects, whether it's a corporate boardroom to, equality in terms of management of finances, and in every walk of life, America has made great strides, but still a long way to go. Now remember, this is the same Sri Ram when he was asked by his father to go to the forest for 14 years to keep his word to his wife, Kaikeyi. Sri Ram offered the kingdom to Sita. Okay. He said that please rule Ayodhya while and become the queen and rule it. Now Sita chose not to take that up, and she chose to be with Sri Ram in the forest for those 14 years. But this is the empowerment in Ram Rajya. You're not treated differently because you're a woman or you're a man. When time came to fight the evil represented by some of the women like Tadaka or Suparnaka, Sri Ram fought them just like he would fight any Rakshasa or demon who was made. So in ideal Ram Rajya, in ideal rule as espoused by Sri Ram, there was no difference in terms of treating people with different genders differently. And that is again something that America aspires to. That is what Ram Rajya aspired to, or demonstrated, not just aspired to. Ram Rajya demonstrated it. America, India, other countries aspire to that. Then you can go down the list, right? So that here is an interesting one. Patriotism, and in America, patriotism is aspired to with highest regard. In America, people talk about the virtues of patriotism. You can look at our holidays. We have Memorial Day, and we have Independence Day, we have Veterans Day. These are the things that bring out patriotism in people. We pay respect to people who fought for the freedom that we enjoy today in America. Okay. We are thankful to the land that is America for the opportunity it provides. But as with any other country, there are ups and downs. We go through good times and we go through difficult times and challenging times and all of that. But here is the story. Okay, Sri Ram, when he goes to Lanka to rescue Sita, Lanka was a city that was built with gold, the richest place in the world. Sri Ram wins the battle against Ravan. Right? He wins the battle against Ravan, and he now is de facto ruler if he wants to be, and we'll come to his views on colonialism a minute later. But Lakshman says, Ram's younger brother Lakshman says, Shri Ram, look at this city. It is so rich and so prosperous and so beautiful. Why don't we shift our capital from Ayodhya to Lanka? Okay. Why don't we just shift our capital here? Here is the ideal place. It's beautiful, scenic, prosperous, rich. People here are learned. Much better than Ayodhya. And what does Shri Ram say? Shri Ram says, Janani Janmabhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi. Okay. Janani Janmabhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi. My mother and my motherland are better than even the heavens. So I will go back, and we should go back to Ayodhya, because there is no better place than my motherland. Patriotism, right? So that is the patriotism that we in America always celebrate. We say we have, there are times when, when we are really, things are going really well. There are times when we go through challenge, and we still want to be, we want to show our patriotism and fight for the country that we live in. Your comments.
And as I had noted before, it's also a lesson on occupation, and a very important one, because in today's geopolitical context, we'll always run into this. Almost every 30 years, we run into this situation where some power is trying to occupy pieces of land, pieces of territory from somebody else, and purely because they have the ability and the strength to do it. So that's another concept that needs to be looked into.
So Utsada, let me welcome Jyoti ji, who has just dialed in. Jyoti ji, welcome and namaste. You are on HinduLounge. HinduLounge is a weekly live show on contemporary American Hindu issues. And today we are talking about envisioning a Ram Rajya in America. What would Ram Rajya mean in America? It's certainly not a theocratic state, but it's the ideal how Ram Rajya was gone. Jyoti ji, welcome. You are live on HinduLounge. Jyoti ji, please go ahead. We can hear some background noise, but we can't hear you.
I think Jyoti's mic is switched off.
Your microphone is switched off. And let me unmute you. I don't know why it became mute, but just a second. Let me. Jyoti ji, she just logged off. Maybe she'll dial back in. So now let me continue. And that so you were, you gave the example, or you were giving the example of Vibhishan, right?
Correct.
As to how Sri Ram, even after conquering this rich, prosperous city, did not colonize it. Actually, not only that, Utsada, Sri Ram also did Ashwamedha Yagna. And what he did was, and that is again something that, in America we always talk about, well, is it America's role to, to export democracy to other countries, right? We always talk about that should America be interfering? And, so what if there is a country that is evil, let's say, a country that is autocratic, evil, something like North Korea. And we say, well, let them live. I mean, not our problem. Let them do whatever they want. Why do we care? But America doesn't live like that. America doesn't work like that, right? Even though there are, places that are far away, aspirationally, America says, look, I mean, there are human rights violations. There are people who are suffering. There's a certain threshold has been crossed. And as a collective humanity, with America leading, we have to stand for people who are being oppressed. We want to make sure that a certain, basic human rights are respected around the world. And, there are various ways America goes about doing that. Nothing is perfect, okay? We're not going to sit here and claim that we live in a perfect society and everything is perfect. But the aspiration to see human rights, being respected, oppression being ended, oppressive regimes being ended, that is the same that Sri Ram actually showed how to do it. The whole concept of Ashwamedha Yagna, where Sri Ram tried, to all the surrounding kingdoms, Sri Ram prevailed over all the surrounding kingdoms, not because he wanted to colonialize them, but because he wanted all the surrounding kingdoms to adhere to certain dharmic principles. Okay. In most of the cases, the same rulers stayed in place, just like in Lanka they did. But they committed to adhering to dharma. And that is not interference in the business of other countries. That is not an empty slogan of exporting democracy. That is actually implementing Ram Rajya. That is implementing Ram Rajya around the world. And Utsuda, I want to get your thoughts on that.
So I think it is also probably the most non-violent way of reaching out to adversaries if they believe they are adversaries. Uh, what the Ashwamedh Yajna was doing was to establish a hierarchy of power with the least possible violence. And I think what Bhagwan Sri Ram was doing was he was establishing his authority over areas which needed that kind of support without actually going to war with these rulers. Because in any war, there would be lives lost on all sides. And it won't be the kings who were going to be killed. It would be the average people, the soldiers, the people of the cities. So I think for the time when it was happening, the 7,000 years ago, this whole concept, it was a very novel concept. It's still a very novel concept. And coupling that with this idea of self-rule without colonization, I think it was very unique and very uplifting and morally superior as a approach to statecraft then as it is now. And it leaves us a lesson, and that's why your topic today is so relevant. It leaves lessons for powers like America who have produced over the last 100 years this wonderful society, superior in technology and dominance over the world in every way possible. So I think this is a good template for people to look at. And some of it is, with technology and with changing world, things would have to be reinterpreted, but the moral of the story, the values remain the same.
Absolutely. So that also brings up, I think the other thing is, let's talk about a couple of domestic issues, right? So one of the things that, when you base the rule, your political and your governance philosophy on certain dharmic principles, okay, we're not talking about, these are the universal principles. We're not talking about specific, or we're going to have, everyone go to a national temple to pray before they do something. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about theocratical concepts. And I know that I'll probably get a lot of emails by using the word Hindu Dharma and theocracy at the same time. That is not the intent here. The intent is to put it in context, in American context. And I think people who understand this deeply will understand the distinction between the two. But when you based your ruling, governing philosophy on dharmic principles that are universal, the righteousness, on equality, on mutual respect, all of that, then just as in case of Ram Rajya, the ideological differences become smaller. That is not to say that all ideological differences disappear. I don't think even in Ram Rajya, all the ideological differences disappeared. There are multiple approaches to solving a problem, and the multiple approaches to solving the problem stay. Okay, but when you start looking at things from dharmic perspective, when you start looking at the problems in larger context, and you start saying that, okay, if we are all trying to achieve certain goal, whether it's upliftment of uh, poor, whether it's to provide a better healthcare to everyone, whether it's to provide uh, right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to everyone, if that is our common goal, are there any minimum set of things, action items, if you will, that all of us can agree on? Okay. And when you say that, that becomes now your dharmic principles, despite your ideological differences, become the grounds for what we would today in America call bipartisanship. Okay. Let us try and solve the problem that we agree on, working together despite our ideological differences, not giving up on our ideology, not giving up on how we think a problem should be solved, but let us find common ground. And that is really an underpinning of Ram Rajya. The way you amicably resolve the differences, ideological differences, or any other differences. Right, Utsada?
That's correct. And I mean, it sets the template. That's the main the theme behind it. That it sets the template of mutual respect. And I think that's where the difference between dharmic thought process and theological dogma lies, because theological dogma is based on the concept of my way or the highway, whereas all dharmic thought process, including the utopian concept of Ram Rajya, is based on the basic underpinning of mutual respect.
And also, as we come closer to the end, there are other issues, right? And that we should also kind of, in American context, we should talk about. And one thing that, you look at Shri Ram, and you always see Shri Ram carrying a bow and an arrow. Okay. In America, we have forever, talked about in last 100 years or so, right to bear arms. And you see Shri Ram bearing, bow and arrow, weapons at all times. That signifies something. Shri Ram said he was always ready to fight the evil. And as Shri Ram believed in peace, he also believed in fighting the evil. And he did not discourage anyone in Ram Rajya from bearing arms. And I know that reasonable people will disagree with this. But there is a certain amount of, if you correlate what Gandhiji said about Ram Rajya and what Shri Ram not telling anyone that, oh, you will not carry bow and arrow or you will not carry weapons or any of that, that actually to me tells me that Shri Ram also believed that the tyranny will not just come from the demons or the rakshas that are in a faraway land, or from demons who are terrorizing the sadhus who are doing the puja, but it can also come from state. And there should be, the people should have ability to defend themselves from all evil, whether it's a state evil or whether the others. And the other part of Shri Ram that goes with bearing the arms is fearlessness. As you look at Shri Ram and the way he is described in a Valmiki Ramayana, with equanimity and peacefulness on his face, and yet he is a fierce warrior. He is a warrior that is feared by all because he is willing to fight evil even when he is alone, and taking on hundreds of demons who are terrorizing the sadhus who are trying to do the yagna, or he's fighting the army of uh, Ravana, right? And he is always willing to fight for the weak, and at the same time he's willing to fight the tyranny, and he's encouraging the fight, stand up to the tyranny of the government. So put it in American context, whether it is internal or external, where people, it tells the people that be ready to fight if needed for a righteous cause. And your thoughts, Utsada?
I mean, I think I probably have a slightly divergent thought on this, because I believe that in today's world, the context of carrying arms, bearing arms, and the context of bearing arms 7,000 years ago, and the technology that those arms carried are probably slightly different. But my convergence with you on this is, at the moral level, the values are still the same with which people approach these issues. And it's the value of, being brave. It's the value of having a sense of self-sacrifice for the sake of the larger community. And it's that value that is important. But I do diverge on the point that the way individuals were looking at carrying, weapons during the Ramayan's time is different from what it is today. So today you can buy an assault rifle that shoots, 2,000 bullets in 10 minutes. It wasn't the case in that time. So I think there has to be more responsible approach towards it in today's context, just because of the divergence of technology overall.
Right, and I didn't describe what kind of arms to carry, so we'll keep that for a separate discussion.
Correct.
And we may agree, we may not. I don't know. We haven't talked about it ever, so it's one of the good discussions to be had at some point.
Correct.
So it's not. A couple of other points that we should kind of bring out, and one of them, or at least at least one of them, and that is Sri Ram. We talked about it, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize one more time, and that is, even when it is Ram Rajya was never about centralization of power.
Correct.
So even a person like Sri Ram actually bowed down to someone who had knowledge.
Correct.
Okay. And he bowed down to someone who was elder. And he bowed down to people who deserved the respect. And the same was true when Sri Ram treated other states. So he respected individual rights, he respected rights of the states, he respected rights of other people. And I think that is something that we all need to, every country, and including American democracy, the respect for individual rights, respect for the rights of the states, respect for rights of, respect for these things is sacred. It should be honored, because only then you can have a true democracy, right?
That's true. Absolutely.
So then with that, I want to just close out this conversation by sharing this one screen and see what you have to say about it. So let me just share this screen one time and get your view on this. This is the last one. And again, I am going to read the English part of it. And this is a poem. It says that you live in Ram's kingdom, hold your head high, fight for justice, treat all as equal, protect the weak, know that dharma is above all. Hold your head high, you live in the kingdom of Ram. That, Utsuda, is Ram Rajya. Your
Absolutely.
thoughts?
And I think we should who is the author of the poem. It would be something that we should mention.
Yeah, it is a contemporary author who has come up with a series based on Ramayana. The name skips me, but I will duly acknowledge him when we publish this slide deck and we put it out on our website.
Yes, absolutely.
So that we, that is, and you can do a whole day worth of show just on Ram Rajya and how it its application in America and things like that. But in interest of time, we're going to come to a stop on this topic and move on to our couple of other things. Um, as always, we have two things that we always close out with. One is the Hindu Seva Act or Charity Act of the Week, and the other one is the Hindu Phobe of the Week. And Hindu Phobe of the Week is our most anticipated segment, and we'll talk about it. But we'll first talk about the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week. And so that before I go there, you had mentioned that we may have a live drop-in on one of the events that is happening in Washington, D.C. So are we doing that?
I think we would skip it for today because we are really short on time. So I think we should skip it for today. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then let me share the screen on the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week and get your thought on that. And then we will talk about our favorite segment of Hindu Phobe of the Week that everyone is, always anticipates. So, Utsuda, oops, wrong slide. Hindu Seva Charity of the Week.
So the Hindu Seva Charity of the Week, as you can see, is a World Hindu Council of America project called Support a Child. And the reason we chose Support a Child is because despite the perils of our times, which is COVID and the social social distancing and the shutting down of all public spaces, SSC Seva Charity, Support a Child has really worked hard to continue to raise resources to help out the people the most underprivileged people that they have been helping out in the Indian subcontinent. And they continue to host events and they are doing the virtual concert series, which we would like everybody to visit the World Hindu Council of America webpage and see the Support a Child links. And I think it's something worth supporting because the people's needs don't stop. In fact, they increase. The people who are in most need are the ones who are being most affected by the COVID crisis. And organizations like Support a Child are working very hard in these times, despite all the limitations, to continue to raise resources to support them. So that's why we chose Support a Child as the Hindu Seva Charity of the Week.
Excellent choice. So the number of children supported each and every month has now crossed 3,000. And it's amazing that people have, in these difficult times, people have opened up their hearts and their wallets to actually support over 3,000 kids in India. It's a long-running project, very successful, and really worthwhile. So I urge all our viewers to support a child project and really contribute the best they can. Take up one child. It costs only $25 a month. Please support them, and please do attend the free events that are coming up. SACUSA.org is the website, SACUSA.org. Please do visit Support a Child. Utsada, Hindu Phobe of the Week.
Well,
And with a lot of drum rolls, I don't know if I can. I don't know if you heard my drum rolls here or poor imitation
I
thereof.
heard your drum rolls, and it's
And I know this is a segment that always puts a smile on my face because I only can laugh at this. So that I'm going to do a big reveal of Hindu Phobe of the Week. Please go for it.
yeah. So the Hindu phobe of the week is the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, the country of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and the reason for that is that after the 5th August ceremony, uh, commemorating the foundation stone for the new temple at Ayodhya, he makes a statement that the government of India is going to replace the Babri Masjid with the Ram Mandir, and that is extremely unfortunate, and condemns that move. The reason he is the Hindu foe of the week is not because he said that, but because who he is and what his country's position has been on Hindus. So it is ironic, it is despicable and sad that for a leader of a country that has destroyed thousands of temples, thousands of temples over the last 70 years, and turned many of them that still survive into, you know, toilets, literally toilets, uh, to complain about a dysfunctional building that was torn down 30 years ago, and a place with the relevance of Mecca to the Hindu community. I'm bringing in the term Mecca because that is what Shah Mahmood Qureshi's, he person like him will understand what Ayodhya means to the Hindu community globally. And for him to say that is shameful, and shows the amount of ingrained hatred that is there for the Hindus and other communities who do not follow their edicts and who do not follow their theology. So
So,
that's my
so,
thought.
so I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why would you not pick Asaduddin Owaisi, who actually said that we are going to build the mosque again at that spot? How do you pick and choose here? I mean, I don't understand sometimes the logic.
I think there is, if I were
Because
you,
it has to be a difficult decision, right? So what made you choose, Samubud Qureshi and not Asaduddin Owaisi?
because I believe that Asauddin Owaisi, despite his voice and his statements, has relatively less power to implement it. Yet, you never know. So Owaisi had said in the past, you take the police off for 10 minutes and he's going to get rid of all the Hindus.
I think it was his brother who said
Oh,
that,
it's
but
his brother. Okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
the point is that he's not in a position of power and to make these calls. And which brings us to the Ram Rajya Singh. This gentleman, the foreign minister of Pakistan, is in a position of power, and therefore he has more responsibility. And instead, he chooses to use his position of power and responsibility to show hate for Hindus, which is not unexpected, but which needs to be called out.
So that what we should do is actually, run a poll on this and have people vote on something like this, because these are really close calls, and I don't know if one person should be making all these calls.
Would you have chosen Asaduddin Owaisi over
I don't know. So sometimes we have to say that, okay, this prize is shared by two people, but we don't do that. So yeah, I guess somebody has to win. So you're right. I agree with your choice on this one. I 100% agree with what you have chosen because of the larger global implications. But I mean, I kind of, if I were Asaduddin Owaisi, and when I listen to this show tomorrow, because right now it's night in India, I'm sure he's going to listen to this show tomorrow, and he's going to feel really bad that, what did you deserve not to win this? And we should at least come up with a consolation prize for someone like that, because how would he sleep at night after tomorrow when he says that he is losing to Shah Mahmood Qureshi, who is, who is the foreign minister of a country that doesn't even count much. So I think we need to kind of, we need to make it up to Asaduddin Owaisi at some point.
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll do that. All right, so now with that, thank you again. It's a great show, and every week, 11 o'clock Eastern or thereabouts, Hindu Lounge, a project of Hindu Pact, which is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA, is live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Please join us. Please, participate in the show. This is a live show. This is one of the very few shows that I know of which is a live and actually the only American Hindu contemporary issue show that is a live call-in show, which welcomes your participation. It is not meant to be a show where we do interviews and bring in experts and things like that. This is your show, and we want you to come and participate in this show. With that, namaste. We'll see you next week for Hindu Lounge number 18. Thank you for joining Hindu Lounge number 17. Thank you and namaste.
Namaste, everybody.